Nashville Memorial Hospital stood like a palace of glass and quiet suffering on the edge of the city, one of the most modern medical facilities in all of Tennessee. On most nights, its corridors hummed with a restrained kind of order, nurses in soft-soled shoes, monitors beeping in polite intervals, the occasional murmur of a family in a waiting room. But not tonight. At nearly midnight, an ambulance siren tore through the darkness like a blade through silk, high-pitched and merciless, the kind of sound that raises goosebumps on the arms of even the most seasoned staff. The automatic emergency doors slammed open. A stretcher flew through. On it lay a young woman, limp and colorless, as though every drop of warmth had been pulled from her body. Her tailored designer suit, the kind worth more than most people's monthly rent, was soaked through with streaks of blood that hadn't yet dried. Her dark hair, usually pinned back in a flawless executive knot, was splayed across the stretcher pillow like scattered ink. Victoria Harmon, 35 years old, CEO of Harmon Tech Industries, the youngest billionaire in the state of Tennessee and one of the most powerful names in Nashville. Now she hovered on the razor-thin edge between life and death. Her hand shot out and found a nurse's wrist. Her grip, surprisingly strong for someone losing blood, tightened. Her voice broke free from her chest like it had been forced through a wall of fire. "Please," she whispered, "just make it fast. I don't want to feel it anymore." No doctor had arrived yet, but someone else burst through the doors. A man in a worn security jacket, its fabric pilled at the elbows, the fabric faded to a grayish blue. He moved with the kind of urgency that had nothing to do with panic, the urgency of someone who had seen worse and kept going anyway. His eyes swept the room in less than a second, sharp, precise, already calculating. "What happened?" he demanded. "Car accident," the nurse answered, her voice barely holding together. "Dr. Whitmore is still stuck on I-40. The man didn't pause. He stripped off his security jacket and draped it over Victoria's shivering body with a gentleness that seemed almost impossible for someone moving that fast. He took her hand. His voice dropped low and warm and so steady it sounded like the earth itself was speaking. "You're going to be all right, I promise." The overhead light caught his wrist. Victoria's fading eyes focused. Rows of tattooed numbers ran across his skin, precise, military. A code. Not a decoration, but an identification. A combat medic code. Her eyes widened not just in fear, but in recognition of something she couldn't place yet, something buried deep under years of boardrooms and balance sheets and bulletproof walls. His name was Eli Brennan. 38 years old, single father, night shift security guard. And tonight, though no one in that hospital yet knew it, he was the only thing standing between Victoria Harmon and the dark. But here's the question that would haunt her long after her wounds healed. Where had she seen those eyes before? Quick pause before we continue. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're enjoying stories like this, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because tomorrow's episode, it goes even deeper than this. Rewind. 9:30 p.m. Eli Brennan walked into Nashville Memorial with a battered backpack slung over one shoulder and a gas station coffee cup in his hand, the kind with the flimsy lid that always drips. Walking beside him, her small sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, was an 8-year-old girl with a high ponytail and a tiny backpack shaped like a bunny. Cora Brennan, his daughter. His entire reason. "Daddy's going to work now, sweetheart," Illy said, guiding her to a corner table in the hospital cafeteria. "Sit here and do your homework, don't wander." Cora nodded with the solemn dignity of a child who had made this agreement many times before. She opened her math notebook. Her small legs swung beneath the plastic chair, not quite reaching the floor. She was used to this. Every night while Eli walked the hospital corridors, checking badges, holding doors, pushing wheelchairs when the nurses were overwhelmed, Cora waited in the cafeteria. She did homework. She drew pictures. Sometimes she fell asleep with her crayon still in hand, her cheek pressed against a half-finished drawing, the hum of the vending machines becoming her lullaby. No one in that hospital knew Eli's story. But if you'd looked closely, if you'd really stopped and looked, you would have seen it. The cheap watch on his wrist, its glass cracked along one edge like an old wound that never quite sealed. The combat boots on his feet, the same pair that had carried him through 3 deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq, now worn down to the soles but still the only boots he owned. And most of all, the way he looked at people, not the gaze of an ordinary security guard, but the gaze of someone who had witnessed so much death that fear had simply run out of room inside him. 5 years earlier, Eli Brennan had been a combat medic in the United States Army. He had served 3 full deployments. He had saved over 40 fellow soldiers through a combination of field surgery, sheer nerve, and a refusal to stop moving when every instinct screamed to take cover. He had been awarded the Silver Cross for bravery, a citation that described him sprinting through live gunfire repeatedly to drag wounded men to safety. He had performed field surgery under mortar bombardment and refused evacuation until the last man in his unit had been airlifted out. Then one night in Kandahar, his phone rang. It was a call from Nashville. His wife, Grace Brennan, had died in a car accident. A truck driver had lost control at an intersection, and Grace's car had taken the full impact on her way home from work. She had been killed instantly. Cora, 3 years old at the time, had been with a neighbor. Eli requested emergency leave. He flew home in a daze that felt like walking underwater. When he finally held Cora in his arms, the little girl looked up at him with round, uncomprehending eyes and asked the question that broke him in two. "Daddy, where did Mommy go?" Eli couldn't answer. He held her tighter than he'd ever held anything and let his tears fall into her soft hair in silence. He never went back to the battlefield. His fellow soldiers called him. Officers wrote to him. "You're the best combat medic in the unit, Eli. The Army needs you. People need you." He shook his head every time. "I already lost one person. I can't lose another." What he needed was a stable job, a job that didn't require travel, a job that let him pick Cora up from school and help with homework and be there every single morning when she woke up. So he chose night shift security at Nashville Memorial, $15 an hour, no comprehensive insurance, no bonuses, no ceremony, but enough to give Cora a proper breakfast every morning. Enough to pay rent on a 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city where Cora slept in the bed and Eli slept on the old sagging sofa, never once complaining about it. Most people at the hospital called him the nice security guy, the one who held doors open, the one who brought water to patients at 3 a.m. without being asked. No one asked who he used to be. Eli never told. But tonight, this particular cold November night, that silence was about to end. At the same moment, Eli was settling Cora into the cafeteria, 28 floors above the Nashville streets, Victoria Harmon sat behind a walnut desk, flanked by 3 glowing computer monitors. Her hair was pinned back without a single strand out of place. Her charcoal suit was pressed to geometric perfection. On her left wrist, an $85,000 Patek Philippe watch caught the light of her desk lamp. 35 years old, self-made, the youngest billionaire in Tennessee, an empire constructed entirely from her own razor-sharp intelligence and a heart that had, somewhere along the way, turned to stone. "Preston," she said into her intercom. Preston Cole, her chief of staff, walked in immediately, tablet in hand, wearing his usual crisp black suit and the slightly anxious expression he always wore in Victoria's presence. He was 32, competent, and perpetually one sentence away from saying something she didn't want to hear. "Has the contract with Stellar Dynamics been finalized?" "They're still hesitating over the compensation clause, ma'am." Victoria's frown sharpened like a knife being drawn. "Call them. Tell them if they don't sign within 24 hours, I'll redirect the partnership to their direct competitor. Make sure they understand that competitor is already at the table." Preston typed fast. "Anything else? A reporter from the Nashville Business Journal wants to interview you about the Foundation's new charity initiative. They think decline. But this could be a significant opportunity to Preston. I said decline." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "The Harmon Foundation transfers funds, stays quiet, and moves on. We don't do charity for applause. Is that clear?" "Yes, ma'am." He paused at the door, hesitating one moment too long. "Ma'am, are you planning to leave soon? It's nearly 11. Victoria looked at him the way a surgeon looks at an unnecessary incision. "I pay you to work, Preston, not to monitor my sleep schedule. Good night." When he left, the room became very still. Victoria turned toward the massive glass window. 28 floors below, Nashville shimmered like a spilled jewelry box, lights cascading across the Cumberland River, traffic inching along like slow-moving sparks. It was, by any measure, a breathtaking view. She felt nothing, no warmth, no satisfaction. No one had called today to ask how she was. No family, no close friends, not real ones anyway. Just business partners wearing the mask of friendship and employees who smiled because they had to. This was the life she had sacrificed her youth to build. Victoria stood, pulled on her coat, grabbed her keys, and stepped into the private elevator. The underground garage was cold and quiet. Her navy Porsche sat waiting like a loyal and expensive dog. She drove toward the River North district where her penthouse waited in its luxurious emptiness. But her eyelids were heavy. Last night she had slept 3 hours. Today she had survived 4 consecutive board meetings. The mist on her windshield blurred everything into soft, dreamy shapes. Then a truck exploded out of the intersection. Victoria hit the brakes. The world compressed into a single terrible second of screaming metal and shattering glass, then darkness. At Nashville Memorial, the radio crackled to life. "Emergency inbound. Traffic collision at Cumberland Bridge. ETA 3 minutes. Female victim approximately 35 years old. Severe trauma. Blood pressure dropping." Eli Brennan was patrolling near the emergency bay when the call came through. He heard the ambulance before it arrived, that piercing, battlefield-familiar wail cutting through the night. Something in his chest snapped to attention. The old instincts didn't ask permission. They simply woke. The paramedics burst through the doors. "Female, 35, heavy impact on the passenger side, possible internal bleeding, BP 90/60 and falling." Nurse Audrey Finch ran out, her face already draining. "Where's Dr. Whitmore? Stuck on I-40, at least 10 more minutes." Audrey stared at the monitor, her voice came out in pieces. "We don't have 10 minutes." Eli stepped forward. "Let me help." Audrey turned, startled, almost offended. "You're the security guard. I know what I'm doing." His voice left no room for argument. "Trust me, right now." Something in the way he said it made her step aside. Eli knelt beside Victoria. In seconds, he had assessed everything. Pulse weak and racing, airway strained but open, heavy bleeding from her left arm, ribs likely fractured. He pressed his hands to the wound with precise, controlled pressure. Victoria's vision swam. She could barely make out the shape of a man leaning over her, an old jacket, warm eyes, hands that moved like they had done this 1,000 times before in places she couldn't imagine. "Please," she breathed. "Just make it fast. I don't want to hurt any more." Eli looked directly into her eyes. "Not tonight." His voice was low and absolute. "You're going to see the sunrise, I promise." Something in her, some small, buried, exhausted thing, believed him. And that was when she noticed the numbers on his wrist. Eli worked fast and without hesitation. He controlled the bleeding. He monitored her airway. He watched her color, her pulse, her breathing, constantly recalibrating, the way you only can when your hands have done this in conditions far worse than a hospital corridor. "What's your name?" he asked. "Victoria." Each word cost her something. "Victoria, I'm Eli. You were in an accident, but you're going to be all right. The doctor is minutes away. Just breathe with me in and out. Keep your eyes on me." "Why are you asking questions?" "To keep you focused. Tell me what you do." She would have laughed if it didn't hurt so much. "I run a tech company. CEO. Yes, busy life, every minute. Do you ever actually stop?" The question caught her off guard. "Rest is a waste of time." Eli didn't look up from what his hands were doing. His voice was quiet but struck something deep. "Not always. Sometimes stopping is the only way to know how you're actually living." Victoria's hand searched blindly for something to hold onto. Eli took it without being asked. His grip was steady and warm. "I'm right here, you're not alone." The overhead light passed across his wrist again. The tattooed numbers were unmistakable to anyone who knew what they meant. A military designation, a combat medic's code. "You were a soldier," Victoria said weakly. Eli said nothing. His hands never stopped moving. 7 minutes passed. To Victoria, it felt like 7 years. Then Dr. Gerald Whitmore burst through the doors, breathless, his tie askew from running. He took one look at the monitor and stopped cold. Blood pressure stabilized at 105/70, heart rate normalizing, bleeding controlled. He looked from the monitor to the kneeling man in the worn jacket. "Who did this?" Audrey pointed. "Eli, he kept her stable until you got here." Dr. Whitmore stared. "You just saved her life." Eli stood, stepped aside. "I kept her stable, doctor. The rest is yours." As they wheeled the stretcher toward the operating room, Victoria turned her head. Through the chaos of lights and moving figures, she found him, the man in the corridor, already stepping back toward the shadows where he always stood. Their eyes met. She mouthed 2 words. No sound came out, but Eli understood. "Thank you." He gave a small nod. Then he turned and walked back into the darkness of the corridor, just as he had always done, just as no one had ever thought to stop him from doing. Audrey ran after him. "Eli, why didn't you ever tell anyone you used to be a medic?" He smiled, soft and tired and something else entirely. "No one ever asked. But I did what needed to be done, Audrey, nothing more, nothing less." He walked to the cafeteria. Cora was asleep at the table, her coloring pencils still clutched loosely in her hand. Eli placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Hey, sweetheart, Daddy's back." Cora blinked awake, smiled her slow, sleepy smile. "Are you done? Let's go home." "Are you tired?" "No, honey, I'm okay." Cora pointed to the paper in front of her, a crayon drawing of a man in a superhero cape, holding a first aid kit, a hospital behind him. "I drew you, Daddy." Eli laughed quietly, ruffling her hair. "It's perfect. I'll keep it safe." They walked out to the parking lot where his 2008 Honda Civic waited under a yellow lamp. Cora climbed into the back seat, arms wrapped around her stuffed bear. Eli drove through the quiet Nashville streets. Victoria's eyes stayed in his mind the whole way home, the fear in them, and then something rarer, trust. Would she remember him? He wondered. Probably not. People rarely remembered the ones who pulled them back from the edge. There was too much chaos, too much adrenaline, and that was fine. He hadn't done it to be remembered. But fate, as it turns out, has its own agenda. Sunlight crept through white curtains like someone who wasn't sure of their welcome. Victoria opened her eyes slowly, each movement a negotiation with pain. Her head throbbed. Her body felt encased in concrete. Her arm was tightly bandaged. Every breath pressed a sharp needle into her ribs, but she was alive. Outside the window, Nashville was bathed in amber and gold, sunrise spreading across the Cumberland River like something too beautiful to have been planned. And from somewhere inside the fog of medication and exhaustion, a voice surfaced, clear as water. "You're going to see the sunrise." She pressed the call button. Audrey Finch appeared in the doorway, warm smile first. "Good morning, Miss Harmon. How are you feeling?" "Like I lost an argument with a truck." Audrey laughed gently. "You're lucky. Fractured ribs, external injuries, but a full recovery is expected." Victoria's eyes focused. "Last night there was a man before the doctor arrived. He helped me." Audrey's smile warmed further. "You mean Eli? He's wonderful. Dr. Whitmore said without him, things could have been significantly worse." "Is he a doctor here?" A small laugh. "No, he's our night shift security guard." The silence that followed was absolute. "A security guard," Victoria repeated as though the words had arrived in a foreign language. "Yes, but he used to be a combat medic in the army. Not many people here know that." Victoria sank back into her pillow. A night shift security guard, $15 an hour. A man she had looked through every night without once actually seeing. He had saved her life. Hours later, Preston arrived at a near sprint, phone in one hand, tablet in the other, the carefully controlled panic of a chief of staff written across every feature. "Miss Harmon, are you all right? I just got word." "I'm fine, Preston." "The board is asking questions. Reporters have been calling since this morning." "Someone got hold of the accident report. What do they know?" "Only that your car was involved in a collision. No other parties were identified." He hesitated. "Some outlets are already asking about the person who helped you." A heavy quiet settled over the room. Preston cleared his throat. "Should I prepare a press release? I was thinking we thank the medical team broadly." "Yes, thank the hospital staff." Victoria's voice was measured, careful. "Don't mention anyone by name." After he left, she lay still for a long time, staring at the ceiling. Why did she feel restless? Why did something inside her pull like a splinter she couldn't quite reach? A man had kept her alive with his bare hands. A man she had dismissed without a second glance every night for how long had she even worked next to this building? How many times had she walked past him? Cassandra wasn't used to this feeling. Victoria Harmon didn't owe people things. She was the one people owed. But his eyes wouldn't leave her. That same afternoon, Eli returned for his shift. He dropped Cora at the cafeteria table with a math quiz to review and walked to the elevator as he always did. Audrey intercepted him before he made it 3 steps. "Miss Harmon wants to see you. Is she all right?" "She's fine. She asked about you this morning. Go up, I think she wants to say thank you." Eli shook his head immediately. "That's not necessary." "Eli, be serious. Go up and say hello." He exhaled slowly. He hated attention the way some people hate loud music, but refusing outright would be rude. "5 minutes," he told Cora. "Daddy will be right back." The 5th-floor VIP ward was another world from the hospital corridors he patrolled. Soft lighting, the faint scent of fresh flowers, everything so polished and quiet he felt like he'd walked into the wrong building. He knocked at room 512. "Come in." Victoria was sitting upright in bed, wearing plain hospital clothes, her hair slightly disheveled, but her face had regained its color. When she saw him in the doorway, something flickered in her eyes, surprise, recognition, and something harder to name. "You're Eli." "Yes, how are you feeling, Miss Harmon?" "Thanks to you," she stopped herself, recalibrated. "Better." An uncomfortable silence fell between them, the kind that comes when 2 people are unaccustomed to emotional territory and neither knows the map. "I wanted to thank you," Victoria said, "for last night. It's nothing, I just did what needed to be done." "It wasn't nothing," she said slowly. "I might not have survived without you. Dr. Whitmore is excellent. You'll recover quickly." She studied him with a CEO's appraising eye, the kind of gaze that read people's motivations before they finished their sentences. But she found nothing to read, no agenda, no expectation. He wasn't there for a favor, a story, or a reward. He was simply there because she had asked him to come. The door opened. Preston stepped in, already talking, phone halfway to his ear. "Miss Harmon, PR needs a decision on O." He registered Eli. Then he leaned toward Victoria and spoke in a stage whisper that carried perfectly clearly across the room. "Miss Harmon, the communications team strongly recommends we don't build a narrative around last night. The media tends to sensationalize these things." Victoria paused, and then something closed behind her eyes. The CEO mask snapped back into place the way armor closes around a wound. She looked at Eli. Her voice was clean and efficient. "I'm very grateful for what you did. But I think it's best if last night stays between us. I don't want rumors or unnecessary attention generated from this. You understand?" Eli went very still. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes, some quiet light, dimmed just slightly. "I had no intention of telling anyone, ma'am." "Good, I don't like owing people." The sentence landed like something dropped from a great height. Eli held her gaze for a long moment, steady, level, without anger, without hurt, just an unwavering kind of clarity that made Victoria feel, for the first time in a very long time, genuinely small. Then he said, his voice so calm it chilled the air between them, "Then don't owe me, ma'am, just live better." He turned. He walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft, definitive click. Victoria sat in the silence he left behind, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the door. Something tightened in her chest. Something she couldn't name and didn't know what to do with. Just live better. She had just told the man who saved her life to be quiet about it, and somehow his gentleness in leaving had hurt her more than any argument could have. In the staff break room, Audrey found Eli sitting alone with a cup of cold coffee, the kind of stillness that belongs to someone very practiced at being by himself. What she said was incredibly thoughtless, Audrey announced, foregoing all preamble. It's all right. It's not all right, Eli. You saved her life and she told you to disappear like you were an inconvenience. Eli set his cup down. His voice was unhurried. Everyone has their own way of managing a debt they don't know how to carry, Audrey. Some people know how to say thank you, others don't know where to begin. It's not entirely her fault. Audrey stared at him. You are unreasonably kind to people who don't deserve it. Eli offered a smile, thin, genuine, the kind that belongs to someone who has lost enough to know that resentment is a weight he can't afford. Maybe, but doing something good doesn't require recognition. Audrey left, shaking her head, unable to argue with a man that graceful. Meanwhile, 5 floors up, Victoria sat alone in her pristine room. Preston had gone. The room was spacious and immaculate and utterly empty. She picked up her phone, set it back down. She had no one to call. Her parents were long gone. No siblings. The people she called friends were partners in business who wore warmth like a strategy. She looked out the window. Sometimes stopping is the only way to know how you're actually living. How was she living? She had power. She had success. She had an $85,000 watch and a penthouse and a car worth more than most people's mortgages. And she had no one. The thought was so plain and so true that it frightened her. That evening, as Eli and Cora were preparing to leave, Cora came running toward him, eyes sparkling. Daddy, did you hear? My school got a whole new computer lab and everyone in my class got a tablet. Eli slowed. What? My teacher said it's from a sponsor, a big tech company in Nashville. Cora bounced on her heels. Harmon Tech, have you heard of them? Eli looked toward the distant window, where the Rowland, the Harmon tower caught the last of the sunset's orange glow against its glass facade. He stood there for a long moment. Maybe she wasn't as unkind as his afternoon with her had suggested. Maybe she was simply someone lost, someone who had been taught so long that warmth was weakness that she'd forgotten it was a muscle you could use again if you tried. Cora tilted her head up at him. Daddy, do you think she's a good person? Eli looked at his daughter, this small girl with a heart big enough to believe in everyone, and smiled. I think she's trying. People show gratitude in different ways. Some with words, some with actions. Cora thought about this with great seriousness. I think both matter. You're smarter than a lot of adults, Eli said, and meant it completely. They walked to the parking lot. Cora held his hand and skipped. Eli didn't look back at the hospital. He had done his part. That was enough. But deep in the quiet place behind his ribs, a small question remained. Would she remember him, truly remember, once the world swallowed her whole again? A month passed. Victoria was discharged after 3 days and returned to work as though nothing had happened. Meetings, contracts, acquisitions, the familiar rhythm of her empire resumed without missing a beat. But inside, nothing was the same. Every night she heard his voice. Low, warm, absolute, you're going to see the sunrise. She remembered the tattooed numbers on his wrist. The way he held her hand without being asked. The way he left without making her feel guilty, which somehow made her feel guiltier than anything else could have. And what she had said to him. The words she couldn't take back, I don't like owing people. At the end of the month, Nashville Memorial held its annual charity gala. Main sponsor, the Harmon Foundation. Grand hall, champagne, glittering gowns, politicians and hospital board members and journalists moving through the warm light like planets in orbit. Eli was assigned to guard the main entrance. His duties were what they always were. Check credentials, monitor the doors, stand still, and become invisible. He leaned against the back wall and watched the world he didn't belong to. Then she walked in. Victoria Harmon in a midnight blue evening gown, moving through the entrance the way light moves through a window, inevitable, effortless, drawing every gaze in the room without appearing to notice. She didn't see him. She had no reason to. The event progressed through its formal choreography, speeches about healthcare expansion, donation announcements that generated applause in waves. Victoria took the stage beneath the bright lights and delivered her prepared remarks with perfect poise. The Harmon Foundation is proud to commit $5 million to the expansion of emergency care services across our city. Thunderous applause. And then chaos. A flash. An alarm. The fire system screamed from somewhere in the East Wing. The crowd rippled with confusion, stay or go. The hall tilted toward panic. Then, from the left side of the room, "Someone help, he's collapsed." Eli was already moving. He cut through the crowd with the controlled speed of someone for whom crowds were not obstacles but terrain. An elderly man lay stretched on the floor, face ashen, utterly still. People had formed a ring around him, concerned, horrified, completely helpless. Eli knelt, checked the pulse. Nothing, airway compromised. Without a word, he locked his hands over the man's chest and began compressions. 30, precise, unrelenting, then 2 rescue breaths. "Someone call 911 now." His voice rang through the room, clear and commanding enough to cut through the alarm. The entire hall went silent except for the rhythm of Eli's hands. 30 seconds, 45 seconds. The man coughed violently, a raw, desperate sound, and his eyes flew open. A collective exhale moved through 500 people at once. Medical staff rushed forward. Eli stood, brushed his hands on his pants, and turned to walk back to his post at the wall. But this time he felt a gaze fixed on him from across the room. He looked up. Victoria stood at the edge of the stage. She hadn't moved. She had watched everything, the way he moved through the crowd like water through rock, the precision of every action, the absolute stillness in his face when there was no time for anything but the next right move. And she understood something she should have understood a month ago. This man was not a security guard who used to be something else. He was simply, in the truest sense, a man who had decided what kind of person he was going to be, and then lived that way every single day, with or without anyone watching. Preston appeared at her elbow. "Miss Harmon, we should—" She didn't hear him. Cassandra, Victoria, could not sleep that night. She came home, stepped out of her gown, stood under a scalding shower until the water ran cold, and still could not erase the image of Eli Brennan standing in the middle of that gilded ballroom, bringing a stranger back to life with his bare hands, and then turning to walk back into the shadows as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Who was this man? The next morning, she arrived at the office before any of her staff. She sat at her desk for exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds before picking up the phone. "Get me connected to HR at Nashville Memorial. Now." 30 minutes later, she was sitting in a quiet hospital conference room with a pale blue personnel folder in front of her. She opened it. Eli Brennan, age 38. Position, night shift security officer. She turned the page. Military service, United States Army, 2009-2019. Specialty, combat medic. She turned again. Awards, Silver Cross, Purple Heart, Army Commendation Medal, reason for discharge, family hardship, wife deceased. Emergency contact, Cora Brennan, age 8. Victoria's hands had begun to tremble. She turned to the photograph. Eli in uniform, years younger, his eyes already carrying that particular sharpness, not hardness, but the look of someone who had decided to see clearly no matter what the clarity cost him. She turned to a scanned newspaper article from 2017. Combat medic saves 23 soldiers in ambush. Awarded Silver Cross. She read it once. Read it again. The article described him sprinting through active gunfire, not once, not twice, but repeatedly, to drag wounded soldiers to safety, performing emergency surgery in the field while mortars fell, refusing his own evacuation until every last man in his unit had been airlifted out. Victoria's hand came up over her mouth. A true hero, working night shifts for $15 an hour, bringing his 8-year-old daughter to work every night because there was no one else. And when Victoria had needed him most, when he had been there, had kept her alive with the skill and steadiness his government had spent years training into him, she had told him to be quiet about it. She closed the folder. Not because she was done reading, but because she couldn't take another line without breaking completely. She stood. Her heels struck the hallway floor in sharp, deliberate rhythms as she walked toward the exit. She didn't know yet what she would do. She only knew this. She could no longer pretend that night had never happened. And she owed him far more than silence. 2 days later, Victoria Harmon called an emergency press conference. No announcement, no prepared remarks. No time for the PR team to construct a narrative around her. Preston was nearly running to keep up with her in the hallway. "Miss Harmon, we have no content approved. What is the topic? What are we? I don't need a script, Preston." The press room filled within 20 minutes. Cameras, microphones, the particular electric tension of a room waiting for something it doesn't yet know how to anticipate. Victoria stepped to the podium. No papers, no teleprompter. Just the truth and whatever courage she'd found somewhere in the past 48 hours. "1 month ago," she said, "I was in a car accident. I nearly died." The room went silent in the particular way rooms do when no one wants to break something fragile. "The person who saved me was not a renowned surgeon, not a hospital executive, not anyone whose name appears on any donor list or board of directors." She paused, and her voice carried the slight, unmistakable tremor of someone saying something they have been afraid to say for a very long time. He was a single father working the night shift for $15 an hour, a man with no comprehensive insurance, a man who brings his 8-year-old daughter to the hospital every night because he has no one else to watch her. Whispers moved through the room like wind through leaves. Victoria tightened her hands on the podium. "His name is Nathaniel Eli Brennan. And the world deserves to know who he truly is." At that exact moment in the hospital cafeteria, Eli was sitting beside Cora, helping her work through a fractions problem. His phone buzzed. A message from Audrey: "Turn on the TV, right now." He looked up at the mounted television on the cafeteria wall. His heart dropped from his chest directly to the floor. Eli Brennan served 3 combat deployments as a United States Army medic. He saved dozens of soldiers under enemy fire. He was awarded the Silver Cross for exceptional bravery under direct attack. A photograph appeared on the screen behind Victoria, Eli in uniform, young and sharp-eyed, and so clearly already the person he still was. Cora gasped. "Daddy, that's you." The cafeteria turned toward him. Co-workers, nurses, patients who happened to be there for a cup of tea, everyone looking. Eli sat frozen. On the screen, Victoria's voice broke. "When I asked him to stay quiet about saving me, I didn't know. I didn't know what he had sacrificed. I didn't know how much he had given. She looked directly into the camera. Nathaniel Eli Brennan, if you are watching this, please stand up. Eli shook his head, barely a movement. I don't need this. But Cora seized his hand with both of hers and pulled with everything in her 8-year-old body. Daddy, her eyes were fierce and bright and certain. She's saying thank you. He looked at his daughter. On the screen, Victoria was crying. He reminded me that leadership is not about power. It is not about control. It is about service, about stepping forward when no one is watching, about doing what is right with no audience and no reward. The press room erupted. Victoria stepped back from the podium. Then she turned and looked directly into the camera once more, her voice so soft it was almost private. I'm sorry. The cafeteria exploded. Someone clapped Eli on the shoulder. You're a real hero, man. Audrey threw her arms around him without warning. Now the whole world knows. Cora launched herself at his neck, laughing. Daddy, you're famous. Eli sat quietly in the middle of it all, watching Victoria walk off the stage and then pause and look back at the camera one last time, searching. He exhaled. A breath that was heavy and light at once, painful and warm in equal measure. Maybe some wounds can actually heal. Maybe some people can actually change. And maybe some heroes, even the ones who never wanted the spotlight, sometimes need to be seen. Eli's phone did not stop ringing for 3 days. Journalists, television networks, private security firms offering what felt like absurd sums of money, triple his current salary and then some. $45 an hour, full benefits, national exposure. He declined every single call. Audrey stood in front of him with the expression of someone watching a perfectly good opportunity dissolve. Eli, 45 an hour, are you serious right now? I never did any of this for money, Audrey. Think about Cora. Think about what her life could look like. Eli glanced down the corridor toward the cafeteria where Cora was bent over her notebook working. My daughter already has a good life. She has a father who's always there. That's what matters most. Audrey sighed the sigh of someone who has lost an argument to a man she can't argue with. 3 days after the press conference, an envelope arrived at the hospital security office. Cream-colored paper. His name written on the front in careful, deliberate strokes, as though each letter had been reconsidered before it was committed to the page. Eli opened it. Dear Eli, I know you don't want attention. I understand that. But I also know you deserve more than what life is currently giving you. The Harmon Foundation would like to invite you to serve as our advisor for safety and medical preparedness. Part-time, flexible schedule, meaningful compensation. And most importantly, you can still be with Cora. Together, we could help far more people than either of us could alone. Victoria Harmon Eli read it twice. Then he folded it slowly. Audrey beside him held her breath. Well, I need to think. That evening, Eli cooked dinner. Simple tomato pasta, Cora's favorite. She sat at the kitchen table, legs swinging, watching him with her particular expression of deep, solemn consideration. Daddy, are you going to take the new job? Eli blinked. How do you know about that? I heard the nurses. They said Miss Victoria wants to work with you. She put down her fork. What do you think you should do? I don't know yet. What do you think? Cora placed both elbows on the table and pressed her small chin into her palms, thinking with the full weight of 8 years of lived wisdom. You said helping people is the most important thing, right? Right. If you take this job, you'll help even more people. Probably yes. Cora's face resolved into pure, simple certainty. She threw her arms around his neck. Then you should take it as long as you stay with me. Eli held her tight. "I will always be with you, I promise." The next morning, Eli stood in the hospital parking lot in the gray Nashville dawn, took a long breath of cold air, and dialed the number from the letter. "Harmon Foundation, how may I assist you?" "This is Eli Brennan," he said. "I accept." A week later, Victoria returned to Nashville Memorial, not for a board meeting, not for a press opportunity. She came alone, no press stand, no PR team, no agenda but one. She found Eli in the small security office, a warm lamp casting yellow light over the paperwork spread across his desk. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway. Their eyes met. The air between them held something dense and unspoken. "May I come in? Come in." She stepped inside and gently pulled the door closed. The room smelled of paper and old coffee. Outside, the hospital continued its steady rhythm. In here, everything was still. A long silence stretched between them, the comfortable and uncomfortable kind at once, the kind that happens when two people are waiting to see who has the courage to go first. Victoria spoke. "I want to apologize to you, a real one, not for the cameras, just one person to another." Eli set his pen down. "You already apologized on television. That was for the world." She sat in the chair across from him, fingers woven together. "This is for you." She held his gaze steadily. "I was completely wrong about you, Eli. I didn't see who you were. I only saw what I wanted to see." "Why didn't you?" The question was quiet, but it asked for everything. Victoria was silent for a beat. Then she exhaled with a rawness she wasn't used to showing anyone. "Because my father taught me that acknowledging a debt gives someone power over you, so I built walls. I kept people at arm's length. I never let anyone close enough to matter. And now I realize I built myself a prison and called it strength." The room drew quietly tighter around them. "You were right, Illy," she said, her voice close to breaking. "I wasn't angry at you that day. I was angry at myself." Eli was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was warm but grounded. "I'm not angry at you, Victoria. I just hope you've understood that life isn't only about what you achieve. It's about the people you leave a mark on." She nodded. Her eyes were bright. "Do you have family?" "Beyond Cora. Just Cora. My wife passed away 5 years ago." "I'm sorry." "It's all right. I have Cora. She's the reason I kept going." Victoria looked at him, not with the calculating gaze of a CEO, but with the naked and slightly frightened eyes of someone finally seeing a truth they've been avoiding. "You gave up so much, your career, your recognition, everything, just to be there for her." Eli shook his head. "I didn't give anything up. I chose what mattered most, Cora, purpose. I used to save lives because it was my duty. Now I do it because I love it and love her. That difference changes everything." Victoria pulled her hands into her lap. His words moved through her like something dislodging from a wall that had been standing too long. "I built an empire," she said quietly, "and no one truly needs me." "Maybe," Elise said, leaning slightly forward, "it's time to change that." She met his eyes. Something uncertain and hopeful stirred behind them. "Do you think I can?" "I think anyone can if they're willing to try." A small piece of something very old inside Victoria Harmon came loose and fell away. She stood. "Next week we begin. I want to build a community health program, not just financial contributions, but a real place, a place that helps people in ways that actually reach them." "I'll do my best." She reached for the door handle, paused, turned back. "Eli, thank you, not just for saving my life." Her voice was very quiet. "For showing me who I actually am." Eli looked at her with steady, clear eyes. "You saw that yourself, Victoria. I just held up the mirror." The door opened. And perhaps inside her another door, one that had been sealed for 20 years, finally opened wide too. In the weeks that followed, Eli and Victoria met nearly every day. They toured hospitals in low-income neighborhoods. They held planning sessions at the Harmon Foundation offices. They spread maps across conference tables and argued productively over which communities needed help most urgently. And somewhere in the space between the meetings, they talked. Not the surface-level professional kind of talk that both of them were experts at performing. Real conversations, the kind that are almost uncomfortable at first, because they require you to be exactly who you are with no armor. One afternoon, they sat in a small East Nashville cafe, a marked-up city map between their coffee cups. Victoria pointed to an area on the outskirts. "This neighborhood has a high density of veterans. We should prioritize it." "They'll need more than medical services," Ellie said. "Many carry PTSD. They need psychological support, community." Victoria looked at him carefully. "Do you have PTSD?" Eli considered the question honestly. "Some, not severe. Certain sounds still catch me off guard. I still have difficult dreams sometimes." "Are you getting help?" "I did for a while, but what helped me most was Cora. She gave me a reason to keep moving forward." Victoria was quiet for a moment, looking at her coffee. "How much do you love her?" Eli smiled, a full, unguarded smile that changed his face entirely. "More than my own life." Victoria lowered her eyes. "I can't imagine what that feels like." "You don't have children?" "No." "I never thought I'd have time." Eli looked at her steadily. "It's not about time, it's about what you put first." She didn't answer immediately. She just let the sentence sit inside her like a stone dropped into still water. A few days later, at a hospital board meeting, Victoria surprised everyone by introducing an item not on the agenda. "I'd like to propose a dedicated children's space for employees' families. A safe, supervised room for the children of night shift workers, staffed, equipped, welcoming." The room paused. "That's a wonderful idea," a board member said carefully. "But why this? Why now?" Victoria glanced to the back of the room where Eli stood quietly near the wall. "Because I know a little girl who sits in the cafeteria every night waiting for her father to finish his shift, and no child should have to do that." In the back of the room, Eli looked down at the floor. A small, private smile appeared. For the first time, she had truly understood. Another afternoon, Victoria arrived at the hospital unannounced and found Eli in the small outdoor courtyard near the children's wing. And she saw Cora. The little girl was crouched over a younger child who had scraped his knee, pressing a bandage into place with careful, gentle hands. "There," Cora said. "All better." The younger child beamed at her. "Thank you." Victoria watched, unmoving, something softening in her that didn't have a name yet. "She wants to be a nurse," Ellie said quietly beside her. "She's always been that way. She's extraordinary." Cora spotted Victoria and came running, ponytail bouncing. "Are you Miss Victoria?" Victoria crouched to meet her eyes. "That's me, and you must be Cora." "Yes, my dad talks about you." "Does he?" Victoria smiled carefully. "What does he say?" Cora's answer was immediate and completely unself-conscious. "He says you're learning how to be a better person." Victoria went very still. Then she laughed, a real laugh, unscripted and slightly wet at the edges. "Your dad is very wise." Cora opened her small hand. Inside was a crayon drawing, a woman in a business suit, a man in a security uniform, and between them an enormous, lopsided red heart. In Cora's careful 8-year-old handwriting, she said sorry, and that was good. Victoria took the drawing with both hands. Her throat tightened. "Thank you. I'll keep this forever." Cora threw her arms around Victoria's neck, and Victoria Harmon, who had never quite known what to do when someone got that close, held on anyway, tighter than she expected, longer than was strictly necessary. When Cora ran back to play, Victoria stood slowly and wiped her eyes without embarrassment. "Your daughter," she said. "She's remarkable." "She likes you," Ellie said. "And she doesn't know anything about the business world, the foundation, the gala, the press conference, none of it. She just met you." "Why then? Children see with their hearts. They don't filter it the way adults do." Victoria looked at him. Her voice was very small. "Do you think I have a heart?" Eli looked back at her, straight through every wall she'd ever stacked between herself and anyone who might have gotten close, and said, without hesitation, "I've always known you do. You just forgot where you kept it." One late evening, they sat together in the Harmon Foundation office, finalizing the last details of their community health center proposal. Victoria set her pen down and leaned back in her chair. "I think we should stop for tonight. It's already 10. Eli looked up and noticed something in her eyes that hadn't been there earlier in the day, a particular kind of tired that isn't about work. "You okay?" Victoria paused, a rare pause. "Today is my father's birthday." "A beat. He passed away 5 years ago." "I'm sorry." "It's all right." She looked at the wall. "It's just that on days like this I usually feel..." She stopped herself. "Lonely?" She looked at him directly. "Yes." Without a word, Eli stood and grabbed his jacket. "Come with me." "Where?" "Trust me." 15 minutes later, they were standing on the John Sagenthaler pedestrian bridge. Below them, the Cumberland River caught the city lights and scattered them in long, shifting lines across the water. Nashville glowed in every direction, warm and steady and alive. "I come here when things get too heavy," Ellie said, leaning against the railing. "It reminds me that life keeps moving no matter what, which is sometimes frustrating and sometimes the best possible thing." Victoria settled beside him at the rail, close enough that their elbows nearly touched. "Did you feel lonely after Grace died?" Eli was quiet, watching the river. "Every day, but Cora pulled me back, and work kept me focused. And I held on to what Grace told me the night before she died." "What did she say?" "She said, if anything ever happens to me, promise you'll keep loving, keep living, not just existing, actually living." Victoria swallowed. "She was lucky to have you." "No," his voice was certain. "I was the lucky one." They stood in the quiet for a long time. The wind moved softly. The water ran beneath them unhurried. "Illy," Victoria finally said, "do you think I can learn not to be lonely anymore?" He turned toward her, didn't answer immediately, looked at her with the same deliberate, unhurried attention he gave to everything important. "You've already started," he said. "How can you tell?" "Because you're standing here with me, saying things out loud that you've never said to anyone. That's exactly where it begins." Her tears caught the streetlight, but her smile was the softest he had ever seen from her. "Thank you, Eli, for not leaving." "I never will." The night wind moved past them, cool but no longer cold. Slowly, almost without noticing, Victoria's fingers drifted a few inches to the right along the railing. Eli's fingers shifted a few inches to the left. They didn't hold hands, but their fingertips touched, light as paper, brief as a breath, and it was enough. Something was changing between them, not rushed, not performed. Just two people, both of them long accustomed to the silence of their own empty spaces, finding something in that space that was neither silence nor emptiness. As they walked back, Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe, not alone. That night, for the first time in years, Victoria did not open her laptop when she got home. She did not schedule a late-night call. She did not review contracts or market reports or board minutes. She sat at the small table by her penthouse window, a table she had owned for 3 years and never once used, and took out a box of stationery. She reached for her fountain pen, the last gift her father had given her before he died. Her hand trembled slightly. Then she began to write. "Dear Eli, I am not good at saying thank you. You already know that, but tonight I want to try. You saved me twice, once from death, once from the person I had become. I don't know how to repay that. Perhaps I never will find something equal to it. But I am trying to become better, for you, for Cora, for every person I used to look past without ever truly seeing. Thank you for seeing me even when I couldn't see myself." Victoria, she read it once, carefully folded it, slid it into an envelope, and sealed it as though something breakable lay inside. The next morning, before anyone else arrived at the hospital, she placed it on Eli's desk and walked away. When Eli arrived for his shift and found the envelope, he stood still for a long moment. He read each line twice. His expression changed in the way of someone absorbing something true. He folded the letter and slipped it into his chest pocket, over his heart. Some thank yous don't need to be said aloud. They just need to be felt. 1 year later, Nashville woke to a cold, crystalline morning, the kind of winter day that looks like something made of glass and light. At the front gates of the newly completed Ward Center for Community Healing, hundreds of people had gathered. Families with children, veterans with weathered faces and careful eyes, young doctors and old nurses, neighbors who had never had a doctor they could actually see without driving an hour. This was the first fully free medical facility in the region, offering primary care, mental health services, and dedicated veteran support programs, built by the Harmon Foundation. Designed in part by a man who used to be invisible in hospital corridors. Victoria stood on the small stage at the front. No Patek Philippe today, no CEO armor, just a dark gray suit and the quiet expression of someone who had been genuinely humbled and had chosen to become better for it. "A year ago," she said, "I nearly lost everything." The crowd went still. The person who saved me was not a famous surgeon, not a hospital executive, not anyone on any board or any donor list. Her eyes found Eli in the front row, Cora's small hand gripping his. He was simply a good man. "Eli Brennan, will you come up here?" Cora gave him a nudge. "Go, Daddy, people need to hear you." Eli climbed the steps with the demeanor of someone completely unfamiliar with stages. He stood at the microphone, slightly awkward, and offered the crowd a small smile. "I'm more comfortable with heart rates than podiums." Laughter moved through the crowd like a warm current. Then his expression settled. "If there is one thing I've learned in my life, it's this. Healing isn't only for the wounded, it's for anyone who cares enough to try healing someone else." He turned briefly toward Victoria. "We all carry pain, scars, things left unsaid. The question is what we do with them, whether we build walls to hide behind or bridges to reach across." He looked back at the crowd. "I choose bridges, and I hope we all will." Applause swelled from quiet to roaring. Cora ran onto the stage, clutching a crayon drawing. In it, a man kneeling over a stretcher, placing a jacket over a woman, between them, an enormous glowing heart. In messy, proud 8-year-old letters, Dad gives coat to lady, heart shines, The crowd softened into something collective and warm. Victoria stepped forward, holding a small wooden box. She opened it. Inside, a simple medal engraved with 5 words, "Don't make it fast. Stay." She pinned it to Eli's chest with hands that were careful and gentle, as though she feared hurting him. Then she spoke, not as Victoria Harmon, the CEO, not as a donor or a brand or a board position, just as a person who had found her way back to herself. "You told me I would see the sunrise. Since that night, I've watched thousands of them. Every single one was because of you." She met his eyes. "Don't go back into the shadows, Eli. The world needs people like you, and I do too." Eli looked at her for a long, clear moment. "Some pain," he said quietly, "is worth feeling." Victoria laughed through her tears. "It completely is." The crowd rose to its feet, and behind the stage, right on cue, as if the story had arranged it itself, the Nashville sun rose fully above the horizon, pouring gold across the Cumberland River and the rooftops of the city and the faces of every person standing in that courtyard. Cora, beaming, proud of her father, the hero who never wanted a cape. Victoria, finally free from the beautiful, terrible cage she had built around her own heart. And Eli, watching both of them, the sunrise catching his face, the metal warm against his chest, finally, quietly, deeply seen. True heroes don't stop saving people. They just find new reasons to keep going. Up next, you've got 2 more incredible stories waiting on your screen. If this one hit you, tap to watch the next, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Oh, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see where you're watching from.